Class, today is week 8, day 2. We're going to be continuing with Flask. Sorry about the learning portal yesterday. We had problems. But today, I think you guys should all be able to sign in at this point into the learning portal. And Quad just personally recommended that he did this tutorial right here. Flask receiving data on week 8 resources, the very last Flask resource. He said that's the only one he watched, and he learned a lot. So I would recommend that because I trust Qua. I trust Qua. Kinda. Trust him a little bit. I do. That's how I feel. I really do trust him. Why do you think I wanted to do? We have him to work here. What do you mean? No, I mean that, Qua. Come on, baby. You know how I feel about you. Okay, so we're gonna continue yesterday. I apologize. I watched my lecture yesterday and I felt like I did a bad job. I didn't introduce the concept very well. I apologize. We're gonna do it again. That being said, don't be scared. The next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about this MVC framework and all the other little pieces of tools that go into it. Okay, there's a bunch of other shit that we need to do. It's not just MVC, right? So for example, like if you're driving a car, yes, you need to have your keys. Yes, you need to have gas. But you also need to check your oil temperature, like your oil pressure, your water pressure, etc. MVC has a lot of other moving framework, little parts that we need to understand very well. And specifically today, we're going to be talking about Flask login and ways to validate, make sure that we can secure our application. But let's just look at right now. Let's look at what we have right now. You guys are going to be looking at this diagram or some other diagram kind of like it a lot, okay? So get used to this idea. Remember what's going on here, guys. In the top left, we have our user, which is our browser in this case, but one day it can be many other things. It could be a mobile app. It could be another server. Servers can make requests to your servers, which is crazy to think about. One server can make another request to another server. But for right now, we're gonna look at the HTTP request, okay? See right here, they have in parentheses called resource. It's because you're always looking at some resource, just about. Almost every single time we're gonna be dealing with some resource. So just know that what I showed you guys yesterday, HTTP routing resources. We're gonna find a good example. You look at the Rails one, it's almost exactly the same. Obviously the Ruby code is a little bit different, but if you look at these examples right here, you can see like there's like an HTTP verb, get, post, put, patch, delete. It matches to a path right here. Do you see this path? Geocoder, geocoder. Geocoder edit, geocoder, geocoder. And these all map to certain actions. An action is just basically the function that we run underneath that path. Whatever function it is that we run underneath that path, okay? And then this is a short explanation. So we're gonna be, ideally speaking, we need to get towards this pattern. So that being said, we're gonna do the same thing again today. We're gonna use our browser to make a request to controller. Our controller is going to mess with some model, and then it's gonna produce a view. These 3 pieces are going to be working together to eventually send HTML, JavaScript, and CSS back to our browser. Okay? Is that clear, everyone? Once again, to review, we're talking about SQLite. That's our database. There are many, many other databases, and we're going to learn to use another one, PostgreSQL. But right now, we're going to ignore that because it's a lot more difficult in development mode. And you don't need to do that. We only need to do that when we push to production, okay? When we get in our production server, we're gonna figure out how to use PostgreSQL. Secondly, we have this library called Jinja. Jinja is gonna be basically a couple techniques to inject templates into one another, okay? It's how we can produce many different types of code, like without redoing code. And I'm going to explicitly show you an example of how what can go wrong if we don't use Jinja. Okay? Okay, and lastly, we have our controller, which is the app.py file. One day it's going to be many other files as well, but just in this case, in the example of the project we built today, it's going to be the .py file. This is the basic syntax. This is what you memorize right here. Okay? There's no teaching here. There's only memorizing. You either memorize it or you memorize the place where you can Google and find this, because you need to know how to type this or you need to know how to copy and paste this. There is no other solution. Here's a more sophisticated example. Right now we don't see, we just have our route on line 1, right? This route is /students, and in that students we fire an action. In that route we fire the action. The action's name is the name of the function. What's the name of this function right here? Correct. Oops. Students. You can see on line 3, this is where the model of MVC comes in. We're looking at our model, our student model, and we're doing something with it. We're grabbing out every single student in our database, and then we stick it inside this variable S, and then we do something with that variable S. A couple students yesterday said that it was sort of like React props. Kinda. They don't call it the exact same thing, but yeah. At the end of the day, what this S on line 3, what we're going to do is we're going to inject it into what? Into a template, but not any template. Which template? Students.html. It says so right here. This render template, remember, that's a function that we import from Flask, and this function takes 2 arguments. The signature of the argument of this function is what? The first argument is always a what? It's a data type string, but that string cannot be anything. It needs to be a special thing. It should be a file, the name of a file, which is actually a template. Okay? The second argument will be any variables that we need to inject into this. And I'm going to show you an example again. Like I said, I'm sorry. Up until the part where we did views, I felt like the lecture went well yesterday. I went home and watched the lecture yesterday. I'm sorry, guys. You guys have to forgive me sometimes, okay? Okay, so, yeah. Moving forward. Qual once said this, backend is not hard, but there's a lot of things that we got to do.
I didn't.
Okay. Someone said that. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about user authentication. We got to create a new user class. We got to give that person a password. And then we got to require people to log into our site. This is tremendously important, man. I don't think there's a single website in the world that's meaningful that you don't log into, right? I don't think there's a website that we use on a regular basis that you do not log into or you cannot log into. There's a whole bunch of reasons why we do this, okay? One day you guys are gonna need to learn about admin roles and like giving certain users certain permissions where certain users can access certain parts of the app. It gets a lot more sophisticated, but let's start small, okay? Let's start small with just a user. Yep, Facebook requires it. Okay, there's a super important rule when we talk about authentication. And the rule is that we never ever want to store a raw string of a user's password in our database, okay? That's a very bad thing, a very big no, don't do that. Some people have done it, and then their companies got really fucking in big trouble later on. But just know that you should not do this, and I'm gonna show you guys how not to do this. How can you remember your user's password if you don't store the password? How's that possible? And it's going to be through this thing called programming. Specifically, a hashing algorithm. So here's like a simplified example of how this works. But just know that you take some text right here, which is a password. You do a hash function on it, and that produces an output. And just know that the same password will always produce the same hash. I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so I'm going to make a directory. I'm going to call this Flask login. I'm going to cd into Flask login. Now I'm going to do the Python 3 thingy to create the VNV. So we're now getting all of our stuff. Now if we type in ls, we can see that we have our initial project set up. I'm going to go ahead and do some more because I'm an experienced programmer and I know what to expect. I know that I need a folder called templates. I know that I need a folder called static. Okay, that's what a senior developer knows. We're also going to create an app.py. Now if you guys type in ls, you guys can see 1 file, 3 folders. Because I know that I want this code in production, I'm going to go ahead and run git init. Now if I run git status, you guys will see that we have a couple files that we have not yet added. Let's go ahead and add everything. Okay, now it's commit, and we'll say that this is our initial commit. Oops, I don't think I should have done that. Okay, so I'm gonna touch My bad. I'm gonna touch get ignore. Sorry, I've forgotten to talk about get a lot, but this is important. You guys gotta know all the steps. Remember. So inside of our get ignore, we're gonna do v and v. We're gonna ignore. I think that's how we ignore a folder. Capital slash at the end. Okay, so that's how I ignore it. Oh my bad, I put in this wrong folder, wrong file. Should be in this file. Oops, I did 2 boo-boos right in a row. Okay, so now if we run get status, we can see that we added that. Let's go ahead and add our environment right here to our get ignore. Now we do get status. Okay, so now you can see that we're not tracking this .env, but we are tracking that v file, env file, and we don't want to do that. I'm gonna ignore it right now because I want to focus on the login. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked here. Okay, so I'm gonna get add all, get commit, add get ignore. Okay, so let me go ahead and source the environment, just like basically putting on our shoes, getting prepared for work. You guys can see that after we run this command that we memorized, that we have this v thing right here. That means that we've set up our work correctly, and we can now do whatever we need to do in terms of Python code. Oop. Okay, so I told you guys I would demonstrate a hashing algorithm and how it works, okay? So I'm now going to tell you about a new tool called a shell. A shell allows us to do like access our database and call functions that are defined in our app, okay? So I'm going to run flash shell, and now you can see that it's complaining that I haven't set up the application correctly yet. And the reason why that is in app.py, we haven't done anything. So we're gonna from Flask import Flask, and then afterwards we're gonna do app equals Flask, call this function name. Afterwards we need to run an if. Why does this work? Yeah, right there. This is the basic setup, okay? So then we're gonna do app.run debug true. Okay? So my hypothesis now is that I can run this. And now you guys can see that we've successfully set up our Flash shell. Okay, so let's go ahead and focus on how we can encrypt the password and then like store it somewhere and then decrypt it for later consumption. So we're gonna do from work. How do you spell it?
No idea. Look at the package.
Work. Okay, so we're gonna do from workzerg.security import generate password hash. We're also gonna import this other thing right now. It's called check. Yeah, check password hash. Okay, so you guys can see that Flash shell is not throwing an error. And the shell is just basically a place where we can execute some Python code. Look, 1 + 1. Oops, 1 + 1 is 2. 20, divided by 2 is 10. Okay, so we've imported some libraries, right? We set up our project. We sourced our environment. We turned on our Flash shell, and we imported this thing called generate password hash as well as check password hash. Now let's check it. Let's try it. We do generate password hash. This is a function. We can call it, and when we call it, we need to pass it a string. ABC 1 2 3. If I hit enter, you guys can see that this is our hash encrypted password. And what's important to understand about this thing is that we can decrypt it. But additionally, the first part of the string is the same right here. But you guys will notice, despite the fact that we put in the same password on both times we hash this, that there's 3 parts of the string that's really important. But the third part right here is actually different. Yet, it is in fact the same encrypted password. So how is this important? So let's go ahead and store this inside of a string, a variable called hash. And now we're gonna do the inverse, okay? We have a hash, which is inside of it. This is like, there's a bunch of little secret things inside of it. And if you guys copy this, you guys can't decrypt it. You don't know what is inside of here. You don't know what valuable piece of data is inside of here. But if you have check password hash, and then you pass it the hash, and you compare it with a string literal or a variable, it will produce a Boolean value. So let's think about this, guys. A second ago, I called a function and passed it an argument ABC123. It gave us an encrypted value inside a variable called hash. Now we're gonna call check password hash. We're gonna compare that hash to a string that is the exact same value. And the produced output is true. But if we stick in something else, you guys will now see that it's false. So the reason why this is important, this is why most websites, when you guys lose your password, they never ever offer to give you your old password back. They just tell you to create a new one, okay? Because even the people working there cannot decrypt the password, right? It's called one-way encryption. So the best thing they can do is, if they're a database admin, they can say, you know what, I'm just gonna allow you to change it, but I can't actually decrypt it to let you know what is inside of it. You should never ever, if someone ever calls you from Facebook and says, hey, I need your password, like something went wrong, that person is trying to steal your identity, okay? That never ever happens. Do you have any questions so far about hashing? Okay, so remember the idea is that we take in plain text, we run this hashing function, we get this hash out. Obviously, whenever the user signs in, we need to do the inverse of that, right? We need to do this part, check password hash. Okay, so we're gonna be using these two libraries today. Obviously, I just demonstrated Wuxerg, and we're gonna be using Flask login. And we're gonna be looking at documentation. I don't remember them all. Specifically, there are three important functions that Flask login gives us. It gives us the ability to log in a user using a session storage, okay? Session storage. And that's just basically another type of local storage. Remember local storage and session storage? Okay, so just know that this is a part of something that we have to deal with. But the most important thing is number 3, current user. Remember, I keep telling you guys this person called current user is like very important. Every single framework, every single programming language has like some concept of current user. You need to know who you're building for, why you're building, etc. Right? So why are we going to be doing this login system? When there's libraries that can already do this for you, just know that like we have to know how to do this, because like every single app you build in the future, you're gonna have some form of a login system. It's that simple, okay? And we need to know how this understands profoundly. Yeah, it's the same thing, man. We're gonna be doing this a lot. Every single one of your apps is probably gonna have one of this. And that's it for our presentation, or our slides. So now let's go ahead and jump into our code, our live code. Okay, so you guys just saw a few moments ago that I set up this app right here, and we have our, our boilerplate setup right here. Can we run Python app.py? Well, we cannot, because we have not yet installed Flask. So we run pip install Flask, then we run Python app.py again, and you guys can now see that the server is living, the server is alive. And now you guys see a complaint from Flask. It says not found. The requested URL was not found on the server. What is the server? It's this thing right here, right? Watch this. I can make requests to my server. If I hit enter in this tab right now, you guys are gonna see a GET request. I'm sorry, I'm harping over the same point again for those of you guys who understand this already. Just know that the repetition is okay. So we hit enter in our URL in our search bar. We made a request to our server. Our server gave us back a 404. our server understood the request but did not know how to respond. Okay? Or no, it said yeah. So now we can fix this. So we can say app.route. We're gonna find a route at our root path. And we're gonna say that this is an action called root. And then we're gonna say it returns hello world. So if we refresh our page, you guys will now see hello world. Okay? If we look at our HTML and we look at our elements, you guys will see that inside of our body we have one H1. We have exactly one H1 in the body of this page. But we should probably have more than that, right? We should probably have like a nav bar, some other stuff. Okay? So, because we want a nav bar, and because we're highly trained software developers, we know that we can use this thing called Bootstrap. And we're going to do that. So we're going to go to get Bootstrap. We're going to go to our getting started page. We're going to copy this. Actually, I skipped one thing. Before we start doing that, guys, know that we're never ever going to return a string from here, okay? We want to silo our code off, okay? I don't want to start writing HTML in here. Do you guys want to? Does anyone want to do that? I guarantee you it's going to be problematic. We can do this. I mean, potentially, right? I could do this right here. You know, let's just do this. Let's see how this goes. This just doesn't work, okay? None of our tools is working. This is not an HTML file. I can't even use hotkeys, okay? So just know that you want to silo off your code. So I'm gonna do a render template, which is a magical function provided by Flask. We're gonna import it, and then we're gonna call this function. We're also going to give it an argument because we know its signature. Its signature is that it has to take a string as its first argument. The first argument has to reference a file. And we're gonna call this one home.html. So right now, if we go to the application, it's gonna complain. Let's go to it. It's gonna say, hey, I don't have this template. No home.html. So we're gonna fix this problem. I'm gonna create a file. I'm gonna call it home.html. And inside of here, we're gonna do our HTML5 thing. Okay. And we're gonna call this page what? What page is this again? Login. Right? We're gonna create a login page. So now if we refresh the app, you guys will see that our login page works. We have the login thing right here. We're gonna close some of these. So we have our page, but there's nothingness here, okay? So now let's go ahead and give an H1 here. Say, please log in. So we refresh. And we can see that now that we have our please log in here. Excellent. Okay, so let's go ahead and import Bootstrap because we want to go ahead and have a nav bar. We'll do that Bootstrap right there. We'll import from a CDN, and then we're going to look at our components. Let's just go ahead and copy the JS while we're here. We're going to put this above our body tag. Now we'll look at our components. We're going to look at nav bar. I'm just going to copy the first one. I'm going to paste this above right here. Now if we refresh our page, should we have a sexy nav bar? Yes, we should. It even works. Amazing. Okay, so at this point, we have our home.html. It's got a bunch of a bunch of HTML in it. Now it's time to insert a form. So go to examples of Bootstrap. We're gonna look at, there's a form that I always like grabbing, the sign-in form right here. I'm gonna copy the body like I always do. Copy that. I'm gonna paste it right below the script tag, or right below the H1. Okay, this image is not gonna work. Sorry, if I'm moving too quickly, let me know. And I'm gonna put this form inside of a container. Okay, so now we go back to our application, we refresh, and we see that we have a beautiful, beautiful form right here. but the form is a little bit too wide. So I'm going to say, hey, we're going to make this container column 6. Okay, that looks good. And I don't like the way it's hugging the top, so I'm going to say view height 100. I think that'll fix it. Let's go ahead and... Oh, it's because of the please high. This thing right here. That. Alright, we'll save it, refresh. How can we make this have some margin top? Margin top. Empty?
No, you can use only 5.
5 or 10?
It's from 1 to 2, 3, 4, 1 to 5.
Okay, thank you guys. You guys know Bootstrap better than me. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this checkbox too, because I'm going to make this lab really easy. Okay, so now we have a sign-in form. We have our nav bar. And let's go ahead and say hello. Let's just pretend that we have some authentication right now. And we're going to work on what happens on the UI after we click this button, okay? I click sign in. What happens right now? Yeah, it just posts to the same page, right? It goes to the same page. It like refreshes the same page. So we need to update this form, right? This form right here, we need to have methods, and we're gonna say is equal to post. So when this form posts, it's gonna post to the exact same URL that it's at. What URL are we at? Yeah. So watch this. No matter what happens, when I click this thing, it's just gonna post to the same URL. Watch the server logs. Oops, I gotta fill this out. What? Did I not save this? I'm expecting this to be a post request. What is going on here? Is it method? Okay, my bad, it's method. I spelled this wrong. Okay, let's try this again. All right, we're gonna do our email, our password. And now you guys can see that we made a post request, okay? We made a post request to our root path. And you guys will see that Flask is now complaining and saying, hey man, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to make a post request to that URL. What URL? Our root URL, okay? So we got a couple different options at this point. We can look at the request and have this route take multiple requests. And I'm gonna show you how to do that because I think that's what I actually do want you to do now that I think about it. So we're gonna do requests. We're gonna import this library, this object from Flask called request, and we're gonna use that in just a moment. We're gonna say if request.method is equal to post. Oh yeah, my bad. So we can do, I forgot the syntax. Sorry, I always forget the syntax. Oops, my bad. So we gotta do something right here, okay? The second argument for routes on line 5, we're gonna do methods equal an array, and we say post and get. This is just basically saying, hey, I want this root path right here on line 5 to take both a post and a get. So now we're gonna say if request.method is equal to post, we're gonna do something here, okay? We're gonna print you signed in. Fuck. You signed in. All right, so let's go ahead and start our server again because it died when we did that wrong. We see that it's live. We go back to our root path and we submit. So the expectation is what? Say again? Correct. Did this work correctly? And it said you sign in. But when the user signs in, what is the next logical step that we should do? Should we send them back to the original form?
No.
What do we do?
We send them to the
Okay, we send them somewhere else. Okay. So now I'm gonna show you how we do that. So now we need to import another library, and we're gonna call this one redirect. And redirect is used in conjunction with this other library called URL4. So we're going to use both of these. So when a user signs in, we're going to return a redirect, and the argument passed to our redirect is going to be another function, specifically URL4. So when we call this function, we need to give it an argument. And the argument that we give this function is going to be the name of another action. So watch what happens. I'm going to say potatoes. Okay, potatoes. So if we sign in, what's going to happen? Yes, we don't have an endpoint called potatoes. Could not build URL for endpoint potatoes. So we can fix this. We're just going to copy what we have here down. And we're going to change this to potatoes. Okay? Now what would happen? All right, let's see what happens. We're just going to go back to the same page. I think that's what's going to happen. So we go back to the same page. But that's stupid. Okay, we're building a web application. Web applications have many, many pages. So now that's why I'm going to introduce you to the next part called templating. So instead of going to home, we're going to say profile. Because when a user signs in, they're probably going to go to their profile, right? And I'm going to leave this as potatoes. I want you guys to think about how stupid of a name that is for an action. Okay? I want you guys, this is why you guys will sometimes see these things called something different. They should be something descriptive of what's going to happen there. So at potatoes, we're going to render profile. And inside of, we need to define this template. We're going to say profile.html. And then we're going to put an h1 and we're going to say, hello world, this is my profile. Okay? So we refresh, we sign in. What? Because I didn't refactor this, my bad. This should be going to potatoes. Wait, redirect. Profile. Oh, it's a. When I sign in, I went to potatoes. Okay, this thing. Profile. New template profile. Let me try this one more time. Never. Okay, so you guys see that we signed in successfully, right? And it directed us over to a different page. But what did we lose?
Data.
Huh?
Our login information.
Yeah, we lost a lot of stuff, okay? We lost the navbar, we lost our headers, we lost a bunch of the stuff that is going to be shared, okay? So we have two options here. We can just copy all this and then paste this in our profile. And then we just start deleting every single thing that we don't need. We didn't need this form, right? We need this H1. We paste it. We refresh. And you guys will see now that we have our same navbar, right? We still have our navbar. And then now if we go to our root path, we also have our navbar. And once again, we go to our profile, we have our navbar. But this becomes problematic following this pattern. Because what if we want to change this one piece of text here on line 15? That means we also have to change it inside of home.html on line 15. And as our applications get more complicated and we start changing multiple things, like just think about this, right? We want to change link drop down disabled, okay? So now we have to refactor multiple files, right? Let's just go ahead and drop this drop down. We delete it right here. Then we delete it right here. This is not the best way. Okay? We don't want to be repeating our code. Do not repeat yourself. Okay? Dry. Do not repeat yourself. So we're going to now use the thing that I explained very poorly yesterday. We're going to use templating. Okay? We're going to inject templates inside of each other, and certain templates will hold the code that is shared between every single endpoint. So now we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this one base.html. Okay? And inside of our base, then we're going to do our HTML5 thing. And then inside of here, we're going to do our Jinja block thing. We're going to have a head. And then inside the body, we're gonna have our ginger block. We're gonna call this one body. Okay?
Do you have to put m.body or do you just put m.?
I think no, I don't think you have to put this. I think you can put this for
It doesn't break it, but
yeah, it's to make it better. So now I'm going to copy over our bootstrap, and I'm going to put bootstrap inside of this thing right here, our base template, because our base template is going to hold everything else. Okay, and then inside of there, I'm going to take out our navbar, and I'm going to put our navbar inside of our base, and then I think that should be good to go. So now if we want, now the only difference on our profile page is that we have this H1, right? But we refresh, you guys will now see that we've lost our navbar again. Okay, we've lost the navbar again. So now we need to do the extending part. We're gonna do J extends, right? And we're gonna say base.html. We're saying, hey, at this endpoint profile.html, at this URL for this template, before I'm giving back to our front end, take me and stick me inside of base.html. Inside of what? Right now, okay, yeah, exactly. So right now it'd be, Ed is going the right way, but right now it's not complete because we have not specified where to stick me inside of, right? We're saying that profile.html will make base.html grow a little bit. It will make it extend further, right? But we have not yet told profile.html what it needs to go inside of right here. So if I refresh the page, you guys will see, now we only have the base template. We do not have the extended template. So in order to fix this, we need to do J block, and we called it body on the right, and then we paste it here. Now my hypothesis is if I refresh this page on our /profile URL, that we're gonna have some HTML generated on our server. Our server will generate that HTML, send it back to our browser, and it's gonna produce a navbar and an H1. And now you guys can see that that is in fact the behavior that we see. If we look at our network, and then we look at our profile, you guys can see that this is the response that the server sent to us, the profile, and it contains all of this HTML. Okay, guys? Do you have any questions? Okay, and what's really important about it is now, if we go here, what's going to happen? The same thing, but that's because we haven't refactored yet, right? We haven't refactored our home.html. So we can delete this, everything in there, copy, oh my bad, let's not delete that. My bad, I still need that. We're gonna paste everything we have inside our profile, and then we're gonna just take out the form, okay? We want this form still. We want that, and we're gonna put that inside the body. Okay, now we're gonna delete this. Okay, so now my hypothesis is that the form, that our root route where we log in, it should still work. And it does in fact work the way we expect. And now, what is the benefit? We have multiple pages that display the same navbar, and we have our navbar logic consolidated in one place. So now we're gonna do one more step. We're gonna take out our navbar, and we're gonna do the inverse, the opposite of extends. We're gonna do include. And this is also gonna name a file. We're gonna call it navbar.html. Okay? So now we need to make that file. We'll call it navbar.html. We're gonna say, I hope I do this right. I have a feeling I'm not gonna do this right. We'll call this one, I think we just do it this way. I think so, yeah. Let's see what happens. Okay, yeah. So now you can see that our profile works and our root path works, and this is called templating. We're gonna do this in much more sophisticated patterns in the future, okay? But the idea here is that now we've broken up our code into things that are like more easy to understand, more bite-sized pieces, and like we've like broken it down into like logical pieces. All the code for our navbar ends up inside navbar.html. Our base holds all the code that like does all the other magical stuff, or that like every single file has to have. Does that make sense, everyone? I just realized I did something wrong. I deleted my script tags. We'll copy this. didn't see the button. Yeah, so now we put this in our base. We put this right here. Okay, so I think that is a good review of yesterday. Kind of. I didn't do everything right now. We're about to do the next thing in just a second for models, okay? This is the view and controller part, okay? Here's our controller. Here's our views. We have a base. Our base like includes other things. It includes heads from its children. It includes this nav bar partial. This thing is called a part of a template. You might hear it called a template or a partial. It depends on what framework you use. And inside of here, we have a different body depending on the URL. At the very bottom, once again, we have the shared code. Okay, so I've been talking for about 40 minutes. We reviewed our view and our controller. So let's get serious now. Let's go ahead and stop our server and let's implement Flask login. So now we're gonna do pip install Flask login. And we also need to do pip install Flask SQL Alchemy. Okay, I want you guys all to create a new project for today. Just implement login and what we're about to do today. And then once you're done, for those of you that finished early, you can add this to your yesterday's project, okay? It's good for you guys to have an example of login as simple as it can possibly be so that you guys don't fuck it up in the future. I guarantee you guys are gonna look back at this project one day and you'll be like, oh, how did I do that? I don't remember what I did. The only thing I can do is look at my code. And even if you look at your own code, you might confuse yourselves. You're like, what did I type that for? I don't know what that means. This happens to all of us. Okay, so we've got our app.py set up. Now we need to set up our SQL database and define a model. Okay, we need to set up our SQL database and define a model. So I always forget how to do this, so I'm just gonna look at the previous example now that I think about it, and I'm just gonna look at this thing right here. So we call on our app, we do .config, and then we name SQL database URI. It has to be named exactly this, okay? On the very far right, we have a string, and the pattern is it's SQLite because we're naming what type of database it is, a colon, 3 slashes, and then the name of a file right here. I'm gonna call it db.db. And the idea here is that this is going to tell our Flask application where it can find our database, okay? Where it can find our database to manipulate it, okay? In conjunction, the next thing we need to do is define a new variable that we're gonna consume in a second. And what is inside this variable? Inside this variable is this magical thing that SQL Alchemy gives us. SQL Alchemy. No. SQL Alchemy. We call this function, we pass it our app. So where do we get SQL Alchemy? This is the project that we just installed a second ago. Okay, pip install Flask SQL Alchemy. So we're gonna from Flask SQL Alchemy import SQL Alchemy. Okay. All right. So the very next step is that we need to define our database. Or no, we're gonna define our class. Yeah. So we're gonna say model or no class. Then the name of the model. We're gonna call this user. And we're gonna do this one thing that you guys are only ever gonna see in this one place, okay? You might see it somewhere else, I don't know, but like you probably aren't gonna see it anywhere else. User mixin.
Oh, that's from
Yep. So just know that just like we did yesterday, we're going to have our model inherit some magical like methods. Okay, it's gonna learn how to do certain things because of this step right here, and specifically, user mixin is gonna give us some magic from Flask login. Is that it? Is it Flask dash login? Import user mixin. I hope this works. Okay, I did this wrong. Okay, that's right. Okay, so we defined our user class. Now we need to give it a couple of keys. We can give it an ID. User mixin is this like it's just it's like this is when we, like I said, talk more advanced programming. It's a thing called it's this concept of grabbing methods and putting them inside of our class from other libraries. So just know.
Class inheritance.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. It either can be a module or it can be inheritance. There are actually a couple different ways, and like these all matter one day. If you guys want to become like super fucking pro, you guys are gonna have to read a book. You know, this class is not gonna be good enough for you guys. I'm telling you right now. If you guys wanna build the world's next hottest framework, you're gonna read a book on programming, just object-oriented programming. I guarantee you. Okay, so we need to do a couple more. We need to have an ID, and this is equal to db.column. What is it? It's going to be an integer, and this thing is going to be what? Primary key true. What else do users have, guys? Username? Let's go to username. I like that one. Username. We're gonna say this one is a column as well. This is gonna db string. Is there a text field? Okay, let's just say string. It's gonna be 255 characters long is the max. We're gonna say that nullable is false and unique. My bad, guys. Nullable is false and unique is true. I'm gonna copy the same thing down. Why? Because I'm gonna do the email. Yeah.
If your username is unique, you don't need email.
Fine.
Okay.
You can put email in. What I would say is in that scenario, you put email in and allow it to be nullable. So like, you always want to capture emails if you can. Like any business wants emails. It's just don't force.
I think the one right here is unique. True. It should not be on email. Email should be unique. Okay. Email should be unique, but users' names may not necessarily be unique.
In old days, we use unique username, right? But nowadays, like you can use the same username. It has to be unique.
So now,
your username on Facebook.
So we're gonna use the email to identify the user, not the username.
Right, the way this one we can have the same
Yeah.
username and ID.
They have an idea.
okay, guys. So this is like pretty much the simplest, one of the simplest user objects you guys are ever going to have. It's got an ID, an email, a username, and a password. Okay. So now we need to do 2 more steps. We need to figure out, we need to do like, even though we're importing login, remember how we told you that Flask is kind of like a grocery store and Django is kind of like a restaurant? Just know that Flask, we have to implement some things ourselves. And this is kind of difficult, but it can be done. So we need to do login, we need to import this thing called login manager. Flask login. Login. All right.
Flask login.
So you guys gotta read this documentation or look at previous examples. You guys will see that we have to run this thing right here. I already ran that. And then we need to define this thing called login manager. So we're gonna do this right below thing right there. So login manager right here is gonna complain on line 10, but that's because we need to import it. So it goes away, and that looks good. So when we call login manager, we need to pass it our app, okay? So this is just part of the process. Am I looking at the right place?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I'm looking at the right place. And then the very next thing we need to do, is we do login manager dot init app, init app.
If you have app in here, you don't need to.
You need this part, like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a second, we're gonna give you guys this code. You guys can copy and paste this beginning part. That's cool. Okay.
And then you need app
mistaken.
In here, not here. That's basically those two lines do the same thing.
Where? Okay, my bad, guys. I think that should be it.
Okay.
I think I need to go ahead and... Now we need to define a custom method. A custom method on our class that's going to allow the user to set and change the password, okay? This is the last part of the memorization. Actually, I lied, man. There's a lot more to memorize. This is the last part of memorization for the login, okay? So we're going to define a method inside this class. We're going to call it set password. In the Python world, we always have to call our this thing right here. What is this thing called right here, guys? Yeah. But what is it more specifically? Yeah. What's the difference between a method and a function? Damn, High's on fucking point right now, man. Holy shit, he knew all three of those. On fucking point, man. This right here on line 19 is a method. The reason why it's called a method and not a function is because it belongs to a class, okay? Once again, this goes into object-oriented programming, but just know that in Python world, when you guys define a method, the first argument will always be self. It can never, ever be anything else. What are we gonna do here? We're just gonna set our password to be equal to generate password hash. We're gonna pass it that password when it's called, okay? Now we need to do the inverse. We need to define something called check password. This also gets called with self first. It also gets passed a password as an argument. And the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna return check password hash. What do we need to pass it now? Self.password and the password that is passed in right there. So now generate password and check password hash. This is not for free. This is not globally available. We need to import this from workzerg.security like we did earlier. Import generate password hash, check password hash. Okay, guys. All right, so we defined our model. Now we need to tell our DB to create all tables. And this is the last piece of code. I'm sorry. Now I need to show you some code that is actually running. Okay, this is all just like talking about code and smashing our keyboard. Okay, it's time to test. So we're gonna go to our application. We're gonna run our Flask shell. Okay, we don't have a module called Flask login, so we're gonna do pip install Flask login. Now we can do Flask shell. Why is this not working?
You haven't installed Flask.
Pip
Flask login using hyphen versus undercase, but like lowercase.
I just did that. Already satisfied. Let's deactivate. And let's do ahead and source it again. Oop. And then we do pip install Flask login, Flask shell. Okay. Sometimes we need to deactivate and then source our dependencies again. No such thing as a perfect tool. It's disappointing. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a user. We're gonna say our user's name is Loy. And we're not gonna create any user. We're gonna create the user from this model that we just defined right here, okay? So we're gonna do user. We're gonna call this model, this class, this model, and we're gonna give it a username of primetime trend. What else? Email of loy@coderschool.vn. Password of, now let's just leave that blank for right now, okay? Actually, I think it's gonna throw an error if I try to do this. Yeah, because nullable is false. I cannot create a object.
No, you haven't committed yet, so no.
Okay, all right, never mind. Oh, so we gotta do from app import user. Okay, so now we've gotten our user model from our Flask application, and we can run this command. Okay, so now we can look at Loy. Loy is this magical thing called a transient object, right? Basically, that just means that like I haven't saved this yet. Okay, so now we need to import db. Oh no, from app import db. So now we can do db.session.add loy db.commit. Error. Oops.
db.session.
.session.commit. Okay, so now it's complaining and saying, hey man, you cannot give yourself a null password. Okay, and this comes back into not null constraint. This is SQL. This is last week paying off. If you guys did those exercises well, this week is gonna pay off for you. So now we're gonna look at loy. We're gonna say loy.password is equal to ABC123. Now can we save him? Okay, we need to add it. db.session.add. We'll add the new version of loy. We'll do db.session.commit.
Oh shit. There's already one loy in the session.
Just think about this. Okay, fuck it. That's not even the most important thing right now. The most important thing is that we cannot store loy's password as a hash like this, okay? Or as a string right there. That's a big no-no. Don't do that, okay? So we're gonna say loy.password is equal to what? I showed you guys earlier. Yeah, generate password hash. And we're gonna call this, and we're gonna give it the password. Okay? So now if we do, from workzorg dot security import generate password hash. Okay, now we can do now we can import check password hash. Okay, come on. We want to set loy's password, but we cannot set loy's password to be a raw string. That is not good. So now let's look at what loy's password is. There's now the secret thingy, okay, the secret hash. So now when it comes time to check loy's password, we can do loy.checkPassword. Did I do that right? Check underscore password. Check underscore password. And loy.password.
It's not a password hash.
I don't. Yeah, I didn't store the hash yet, but just know that right now we can compare that hash to the password. Okay, will this work? Takes two positional arguments, but
yeah, we check two of them. The one in the database and the
my bad. Okay, so my bad. This is all I do. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking stupid. Okay, this is it right here. Because the user already knows his password, or they already has the password hash. Okay, so you do loy.checkPassword, and we get true. When we call this function, right? When I'm calling check password right here, I call this function. It's actually calling this one right here, the one that we wrote. That's our function that we wrote. Okay, so when we call this, just know that the first argument, like Python uses it internally. Don't worry about it. You have to memorize that. If it's a method, it always has itself first. You cannot change that. If you try to write a method that does not do that, Python will throw an error. Okay, Python has to have that. So just know that when we call this this method right here inside of our user class, that we passed in a password, and then that password called the check password hash, and it compared its own internal password to the password that was passed in. Okay? So, all right, so that's enough of that demo. Now, let's get serious. Python app.py, and we're going to make our app work. Okay? We're going to make this work for real. Okay? So, when we submit this form right now, all we're doing is just doing this redirect to potatoes, okay? And now that I think about it, I want you guys to know something. Here's this line of code. I'm going to copy and paste this because I want you guys to copy and paste this and save this somewhere, okay? Copy and paste that code. This code is a debugger statement. It's going to allow you to freeze execution of your code for a moment in time. What the hell does that mean, okay? Remember that we have our server running right now, okay? Right now, when we submit the form, we're going to hit line 31. Who agrees? Yes, we're going to hit this. So if we want to freeze execution there, all we have to do is paste in this code that I just pasted you guys. And just to prove that it hits this line of code right here on line 31, before this if conditional, we're gonna set a variable. We're gonna say told you so is equal to Lloyd just showed you how to freeze a line of code mid execution. Okay? So watch what happens when we hit that endpoint. I'm going to type in my email, I type in my password. Pay attention to the server. You guys will now see that the server has frozen execution on a specific line. Line 30 right here. Or no, line 32 right here. So how is that useful? Well, you guys will see that on line 30, we define a variable. And what if we want to look at it? Now we can look at that variable. Additionally, there are a shit ton of other magical functions that you guys can look at. For example, request. And you guys can now see that when we type in request, it gives us back this magical model, and it tells us the request URL and the request post and just a ton of stuff. Okay? Request.method, for example, which is in fact what we do right here on the very next line. We say, hey, look at the request.method. Is it equal to post? Is this true? Is that equal to post? It is in fact true. So I guarantee you that line 32, this right here, that's how this fired. All right, so enough fucking around. We're gonna move past that. I just want you guys to know that this is very, very useful. You guys need to know how to do that. So when a request is a method, what do we need to do now, guys? We want to look at our user. We're gonna query. We're gonna filter it by. We're gonna say the email is equal to request.form email. Okay, guys? I know there's a lot of magic right here. So I'm now going to freeze the execution so you can see what happens. Okay? So we got back here. Let's go back to this root path. We hit sign in. And we've frozen our request again, okay? So now we can look at our request, and we see that's a post request. We can see request.form. We can see this form. And now you guys can see that our form has exactly no keys inside of it. The reason why this has no keys is Bootstrap was not smart enough. We need to go to our form now. And we need to add some more here. Exactly, we need name equals email. Right here, this is password. Okay, so now we're gonna continue. We're gonna jump back. We're gonna try to submit this form again. It's gonna freeze its execution once again. Whoa. Thank you. Okay, it freezes execution again. Now we can look at our requests. We can look at our requests form. And now we can see that data that's hidden inside of there. Okay? So we're going to be looking at an email. And obviously, we're going to be looking at our password. So we're going to perform what I said a second ago is I wanted to freeze execution to show you what this did right here. Right here is SQL Alchemy syntax. Okay? You have to do the name of the table, a function that you want it to run, and also whatever additional thing that you want. In this case, we just want to find the first user that is by the name, but that has the same email. Okay? So we're gonna run it. And now we need to do an additional step called first. This is gonna grab us the first one. That work? Yes, it did work. The reason why that this returned nothingness is because we don't have a user by that email, okay? So now we're gonna say user is equal to this thing, and we're gonna say, now we're gonna perform some logic. So I personally like the pattern. This is where you guys have to make a decision as a company or as a CEO or a technical lead on what type of product you wanna build, okay? And what do I mean by that? Right here, there are many different steps to like what happens next right here, okay? If you do not hit, if you sign in, right, and you cannot even find the email, do we kick them to another page that tells them to create a new account? Do we do a flash message that says, hey, I couldn't find the email? It's just an infinite number of things that you guys can choose to do, okay? So you guys have to there is no cookie cutter step here. Okay, you guys have to put on your thinking hat and think about what happens next. Ask your product owner, what do you want to have happen? And then you write code that does that. There is no other, there is no cookie cutter solution. Okay, guys? So right now, I'm gonna show you something called Flash, because I forgot to show you this yesterday. So a lot of times when you sign in with the email and the email's not found, there's like a little Flash message that says, hey, couldn't find it. So we're gonna import this thing from Flask called Flash. Okay, and then we're gonna say if not user. So if we could not find a user, we're gonna flash them a message. User not found, and then we're gonna pass an argument of danger. So flash is a function. You can call it with two arguments. The first argument is the string. It is the string that you want it to say on the screen. The second argument is like what color family that you want it to have, and then we're gonna redirect. URL for root. Okay, so that's not enough yet. In order to get this Flash to work correctly, we need to look at our technical leads documentation that they saved for us. And here it is. That's why I shared with you guys in Discord a few moments ago. 7 months ago, our technical lead gave us a document. They've been busy. They didn't have time to explain it, but they wrote it down for us. They've done their job. Now it's time to us to do our job. We're gonna read through this. And I've already read through this, which is why I'm your technical lead, even though I still have a technical lead. So I'm gonna copy this code right here. It's a bootstrap. Just basically know that this is going to add some stuff to our screen using something called a flash. And we're gonna paste this into our base. We're gonna do this right below the navbar. Okay, we're gonna say it right here. And then we're gonna go ahead and comment out this frozen code execution, and we're gonna continue. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, so let's go ahead and sign in. The expectation is that whenever we sign in, we're not gonna find the user. We're not, this is impossible. We have not made a single user yet. Line 32 is not gonna find a user. So line 34 has to execute. Okay, then we're gonna click sign in. Okay, I forgot a step. In order to use our flash, we need to set something called a secret key. My bad. So we're gonna do app.secretKey is equal to my very secret. Okay, so now let's try this again. I'm gonna hit my email. Okay, amazing. So now we have a flash message. Just know that this is a very common thing, which is why this is a library that's always built into almost every application, every API, okay? Obviously the user can close it, right? And sometimes it's gonna be our job to flash the user, let them know what they just did. Let them know if it was a success, a failure, if they're loading, let them know everything. That's half your job half the time. You guys are constantly hearing me talking about prompts. Prompt the user, tell them what to do. That is your job, okay? All right, so I, being the CEO of my company, just on top of the world, doing whatever I want, I decide that instead of flashing them, I don't want them to show them something red. I don't like that pattern. I just want to go ahead and create the email, the account for them. That's quite literally what I prefer you guys doing. But it's not always about what Loy wants, okay? So we're just gonna do it this way, right now. So we're gonna say, if not user, if we could not find a user, we're gonna create a new one. We're gonna say user I'm going to say the username. Fuck. I'm going to let the user choose the username too, now that I think about it. Because the way that the username is set up right now, you cannot be nullable. Okay, so now you can now the user can also enter their email, right? Hold on.
That's weird.
Huh?
You change the type of that input text. Line 9 or 10.
It's the same type.
Change the
Email. Line 10.
Username. I don't know. I don't think that matters right now. We're not even going to be looking at it. We're not even looking at it. It doesn't even matter. So, at this point, we're going to have our username. We're going to create a new user if this is true. If line 34 is true, we're going to create a new user. We're going to say, hey, our username is request.form username. Our password is what?
Request on form, and then you put it through the hash thing. So first thing.
My bad. Actually, I can't do this on this step right now. My bad. So our username is that. Our email, let's put our email first because that's actually usually the most important one. We'll say email is equal to request.form email. Username is that. We're going to stick that inside of our user. And then we're going to say user.setPassword. Set password. And then we're going to send in our request.form password. Okay? Now we're going to db.session.add. We're going to add our user to our database. That's what line 37 says. And now we're going to do db.session.commit. Okay? And the next step is we're going to flash. We're going to say you've successfully signed up. And we're going to give this success. Okay? And then we're going to return a redirect to the URL for profile. I know there's a lot going on, guys. Come on, we're almost there. Okay, we're almost there. So now I'm actually going to change profile to something potatoes right here because that's confusing me. And I think this will work. I think so. All right, so let's try it. We're going to create that Loyboy, primetime trend, a password. We sign in. And we now got a successful sign in. Amazing. We also flashed the user. We also redirected. In conjunction, we can run our SQL. Open our database, choose db.bb. We can click this, click our DB, we click play. And now you guys will see that we have our user in our database with an encrypted password. Incredible. Okay, so that covers how to create a new user and redirect them over. Okay? In conjunction, we can also do if user. So if this, like right here, right? If this condition does not met right here on line 34, where we don't have a user, what do we need to do now? We gotta check to make sure the password is correct because we did find the user right here, right? The first thing we did was we tried to find the user based on their email on line 32. Afterwards, we said, hey, if we did not find a single user, then we're gonna create a new account for them. At this point, if they have not returned yet, if line 40 did not execute, that means exactly one thing. It means that we did find a user. So we're gonna say now, if user.checkPassword request.form password, and we're gonna do something. Are we just gonna print you have the correct password? Would this work? Let's try. So we're gonna go to our URL. We do that Loyboy. Now I don't even remember what my password is. Fuck. Was it? Because I just started typing randomly. I'm just gonna create a new one right now. I'm just creating a new one, okay? It's cool, it's cool. You can say our username is blah blah blah, and our password is ABC123. Okay, Loy at Coder School ABC123.
That's a real password.
Okay, so I signed in. Do Loy at Coder School. Do this. Oops. ABC123. Sign in.
Ow.
Sign in. Did we successfully sign in? Yeah, we did. The user provided their email. We found that email in the database. The user provided their password. We checked that condition right here on line 42. We checked to make sure that the user's password was correct. If the user's password was correct, we need to do more. We're going to return a redirect URL4 profile, and we're going to flash them. Except our flash this time is going to be different. We're going to say, welcome back. How can I add a string here? User.username. Would that work? I don't know if this is going to work. Would that work? I don't know. We're about to find out, okay? We're about to find out. So we're going to do Loy at Coder School. And we successfully signed back in. Okay? Is that the wrong one? What do you mean? I just signed in. Okay, let's try it one more time. Loy at Coder School. We're going to say ABC123. Sign in. I expect to see welcome back Loy at Coder School flash to us. That worked correctly, right? Because there's only one place that we did welcome back right here. Okay? I expect to see line 43 fire.
Why did you put format password?
Fuck, man, I did it wrong here. I don't know why I did that, my bad. Okay, let's try this one more time. Obviously, your technical lead can do things wrong. He does things wrong all the time. That's how your technical lead became a technical lead, by doing things wrong a lot. So now I want to see the say, welcome back Loy at coderschool.vn. Yes, so we successfully signed in using a user that we had previously created, right? And we also were able to create a new user by modeling our database. And we are also able to secure our user's account by not storing their password directly. We use a hashing algorithm, a hashing function to produce a hash. And that's why, right here, you guys can see that we do not have a raw string, which is the password. They cannot get your password. Even people that work there cannot get your password. Okay, so that was a lot, guys. Do we have any questions?
What happens to the database when you put in a new username? Is it editing? Is it just sticking with the original username? Did you just put not known? I was just wondering, does it
That means that if I try to save right here on line 18, if we try to save a user, so let's watch this. So let's go ahead and exit. So now we're going to run Flash shell. Let's create a user called Ed. Email is equal to ed@gmail.com. From app import user. Ed is equal to so Ed is a user. Ed's email is ed.gmail.com. Ed.password is equal to abc123. Now if we try to import, hold on, my bad. From app import db. So now if we do db.session.add ed db.session.commit. When we try to commit this to our database is going to say, hey, you can't fucking do that. Every single one of these users, every single one of their users' names have to have something in there. That's what we're saying on line 19. Our line 19, we're saying, hey, our username, it has to be something. Well, specifically this argument right here, nullable equals false. It's saying, so we're basically setting up some rules, right? We're saying, hey, you have to follow this rule. So watch what happens when we try to commit. It's going to say not null constraint. The user's username is null. That's basically what it's saying.
But that wasn't my question. My question was, in those examples, you put different usernames on your login. It realized it was you, it was Lloyd, because of your password, and it realized the same email address matches. But you put a different username. Was that new username getting put into the database?
No.
With the first request?
That part of code would only execute if I could not find the user in the first place. So if I did not find that user, if the email was unfound, right? We did not find the user, then we would do this part of the code. But because I had already entered a username by my email, then we didn't even look at that. We just ran this part right here.
So when the user came through, they may have typed in something different from plan to ran, but actually that was still plan to ran.
Exactly. Because like we didn't even consume. So this, once again, this goes back to a product decision. Maybe some people don't like that behavior. For me, it doesn't bother me that much. I think it's okay. In this case, the only reason why I added this part of the form was because I wanted us to get through the part where that error. So now we're gonna do Python app.py. Okay, what were you gonna say, man?
You have to locate like this.
Oh, we need to do one more part. My bad, guys. In order to do our, in order to get our Flask login to work correctly, we're gonna call the function that we imported a few minutes ago. Well, at the beginning of lecture. Oh, my bad. That we talked about in our slides that we haven't imported yet. Login user. When we log in our user, we call that function, and then we put our user in there. So now there's going to be this concept of a session, and our server is just going to remember who this user is for a little bit. Okay? Exactly. So that's why in a few months, as soon as we do this, we're going to have access to this thing called current user. And now I realize we also need to import this. Thank God Qua's here, or I would have fucked that one up. Okay. All right, I think this will work. So just go ahead and do right here. We'll do current user dot email. I think this will work. Okay, so let's practice. Try this behavior one more time. And create Laura at Coder School.
So now what should happen is the first time you log in, it's going to push you through to the home page. The second time, it should, like if you go home, it's just going to immediately push you through to the home page again, saying hello, without letting you log in.
Say again.
It's showing is there a user, it should already have that state, but you're not even checking that yet.
No, you have to do some condition check. You have to do it by yourself.
We're doing that in just a second. So as soon as we click sign in, I expect us to see a flash message that says, welcome back, Lloyd at Coder School. User loader has been installed. No user loader. Okay, I forgot a step. So to make this login user work correctly, we need to do this one other step right here. I need to look at some code.
See the documentation.
You're my documentation right now, Kwa. So below our database create all call, or is it above it?
Just below it. It's a function, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, so we're gonna do at login manager. At login manager is equal to dot user loader.
Wait, it should be below user. Okay.
At login manager dot user loader. We're gonna find load user. When this is called, it's given a user ID, and then we're gonna do return users user dot query dot get user ID. Okay, I hope this works. Okay, our server's running. Go back here. Go here. Type in some stuff. A, B, C. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we signed in. So actually, I forgot to show you the other one. My bad. This is gonna be the last thing we're gonna break, guys. I know this lecture has been super duper long. If we get to the point on line, if we did not return on line 44, right? On line 44, this is the situation in which, you know, we couldn't find the user and we created a new one. On line 46 is the situation in which we found the user and we checked the password and the password was not correct, okay? Now there becomes one other situation when the user's password was incorrect. So now we're gonna do slash incorrect password. And we're gonna make this one a danger. Oh no, we're gonna make it a warning. It's called a warning. and then we're going to return a redirect URL 4, and this can go back to
This page.
group. Okay. And now we can see that. All right, that looks good. So now if I try to sign in as Lloyd at coderschool.vn and I copy in this string right here as the password, and I paste, it prompts me. It says your password was incorrect. Okay, guys? So now let's go ahead and try to sign in correctly. And we were directed to our profile page correctly, as anticipated when we successfully signed in. Okay, guys? I know there's a lot going on. So I'm going to ask you guys again, do you guys have any questions before we take our break? I've been talking for an hour and a half. It's kind of long, lecture more than normal. Yes?
So if we want to implement Facebook login, now we're doing it from the backend, we're just making that API call here?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of different ways to do that, but this is also one way. I've done it that way myself before. Yeah. Our servers, once again, like I said at the beginning of class, our servers can also make requests to servers, which is kind of crazy to think about. And our servers can actually make requests to clients too, which is fucking even crazier to think about in a lot of ways. No, it's outside the scope of this class. Sorry.
Next week.
Which one? What are you talking about?
Facebook authentication.
Oh yeah. That's
Next week.
next week. Yeah.
Okay.
Monday next week.
What long information?
It's saved in current user.
So it return a session not something.
Yeah, it's kind of a session you return. It's saved to the cookies
Yeah.
in context.